We all love a good story, and at Publix, we create thousands of stories every day at over 1,200 stores across the Southeast. Through this podcast, you'll learn about the people and products that make Publix the place where shopping is a pleasure. I'm your host, David Finger. I've been a Publix associate for over 26 years. I started as a part-time associate while in high school and never left. I always love a good Publix story, and I'm excited to share them with you. Welcome to another edition of the Publix Stories podcast. So we're going to talk about storm season. So every year there's hurricane season, there's winter storm seasons. We know that there's things that can happen out there that impact our store operating hours, impact what our customers need, and there's a lot of planning that's required to make sure that we're prepared for that. And so today we're joined by a member of our strategy support team who also is a leader of our corporate emergency response team, or what we call ERT. And he's going to talk to us about all the things that Publix does to prepare before, during, and after a storm. So, John, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
And one of the things we like to do is always have our guests give their Publix story. So what's your Publix story?
So I've been a Publix associate for just over 17 years. Started back in the stockholder services department, worked through a couple of different purchasing roles, and now I am a strategy team leader in the strategy support department.
Okay. With the additional role of corporate ERT leader,
Correct, yes.
Which means that you've got some variability in work hours.
Yeah.
During a specific storm, you're pretty much here all the time.
On an as-needed basis, which during storm time is all the time.
All the time. Because I, as a recipient of some of those emails and communications, I see them coming from you on all hours of the day, all days of the week.
Correct. So, so we monitor storms as they're approaching the area and as they're actually impacting some of our stores. So when people are up in the morning and wanting to know what's going to happen during the day, we want to make sure that all the data is there for them and ready.
Okay. And I know this is a extremely complex topic that we could talk about probably for hours, but people might get bored. What we find interesting, they might get bored on. But I want to go on and quickly recap. We've got the whole thing that Publix does throughout the year to make sure that we're ready. Mm-hmm. Then there's obviously things that get accelerated as a storm starts to approach. And then we've got, after a storm has come, we have to recover, make sure we're in good shape. And then we, being Publix and knowing that we always can do better, we debrief after every storm and see what we can improve on. So if you want to walk through each of those stages and kind of explain what are we doing, because there's things that happen all year round.
Oh, yeah.
And then obviously there's things that happen right beforehand. So what happens all year round?
So all year round, we stay in pretty regular communication with officials at the state emergency operations centers for all the states that we have Publix stores in. Outside of the major storm season, there's a lot of preparation work, a lot of planning, establishing contacts with people, and then making sure that they understand what Publix can do to help provide restoration in the community. Obviously, we're a grocery store, and that's very important, but we're also their pharmacy. We're also a place for people to get cash before a storm, so that they can actually buy things after the storm. We want to be servicing the community and actually being a part of getting everyone back up on their feet after an event passes. So we regularly work with them. We'll participate in drills and small meetings and everything, just to make sure that we're working with all those folks and then the other companies in the communities as well, so that everyone's got a good plan. Actually, during the storm season, we're regularly monitoring the Atlantic and the Caribbean, much like everybody else, keeping an eye whenever a tropical wave starts to develop and seeing what the long-range forecasts say. As a storm gets much closer and we start getting an official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, those happen every 6 hours, and we're monitoring that, and we're comparing that against our store locations so that we can understand when our stores are going to be impacted. A really important thing for us when a storm is actually coming to one of our areas is to understand when sustained winds are going to reach more than 39 miles an hour, and when we're going to have real significant wind gusts of even faster than that.
Okay, and so what's the significance of 39 miles an hour?
So that's the speed at which it's really unsafe for vehicles to be on the road. Typically, bridges will be shut down, especially with our semi-tractor trailers. It's not safe to have those folks on the road. So we want to make sure that we have everyone off the roads long before those winds actually get into our store areas. So that also leads us to some of our decisions as far as closing stores.
Right, and that's an important topic, because obviously the safety of our associates is paramount. We want to make sure that we get them out of harm's way. But we also recognize we have a need to take care of the community for as long as we can. And so that's not a decision that's made lightly by Publix leadership. And it's also a decision that can change based on the way the storm changes.
Correct.
It can change based on a store 10 miles away from this store. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into that. So could you explain some of the details? And I know, again, it's a little bit of a moving target, but obviously we're going to err on the side of safety. And so how does that work?
So every storm is different, but really we are monitoring how quickly a storm is moving, how large the wind field is around it, and when we should expect to see those really bad conditions arrive, that the tropical storm force winds are higher. And then we are working with divisional leadership. So you have your divisional vice president and your director of merchandising that are coordinating with all of the different stores, and we're providing them with the data so that they can make a good decision as to when a store should close, and then based upon the information that we have from the National Hurricane Center, how long a store is going to be impacted. Some storms can move through in a couple hours. Some storms, like Hurricane Florence last year, we saw impacted most of the Carolinas for an entire weekend. So we want to make sure that everyone understands when it's going to be safe to get back into an area, and when we might be able to expect stores to open up again.
Okay, and that's why there can be variation in stores that are not that far apart in the hours, because we look at specific wind speeds around each individual store.
Wind speeds, elevations, whatever other impacts that we might see in those areas. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when the storm is coming, obviously people are buying more. We have to get more product to our stores. There's a lot of work that happens. But even before that, much like we encourage customers to make sure that they've stocked up on water and batteries and some of those other things, and they have them in their pantry or somewhere in their house ready to go, we're also sending stuff in advance to stores so that they're ready, so that we don't have to ship everything immediately when a storm's coming. So we send stores basically pre-prepared pallets, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, so some of the shelf sustainable items, water, soups, batteries, things like that, we're making sure that they have supplies of those in advance, and that people can pick those up earlier, and there's not a big rush on them right when the actual storm is coming in. That way, those things they've got them prepared, and then they can go out and get the most important things before the storm: their prescriptions, or their ice, maybe some fresh products, any of those last second things that they might need right before a storm.
So the storm has approached. We made the decision to close. The stores are closed. Hopefully it comes through and the impact is not significant or severe. And sometimes it is, unfortunately. And we have to get in and make decisions about what the condition of the store is, if we can reopen, what the condition in the area is, are trucks allowed to be on the road. So all those things that we kind of practice and plan ahead of time, now it has to be put into action. So talk about what happens, because obviously while those individual stores are closed, Publix is 24/7 monitoring all of that and getting people on the ground as fast as it's safely possible to do. So how does that work?
So again, that's one of those things that we do in the off season. We work with the Department of Transportation in any of the areas that we might have stores that are shut down, so that they know that Publix trucks and Publix associates would be back on the road as early as they can be, usually after first responders. That could be trucks that are actually carrying groceries. That could be our facilities associates that are heading into areas to survey stores, assess damages, and to actually start repairs. And it could also be maybe like our generator fuelers. For any of the stores that have a permanent backup generator installed on them, we want to make sure that those are constantly refueled and that they can keep the store operational.
And you bring up a key word there, generators.
Yeah.
So Publix has made a significant investment in generators to make sure that we can be open and take care of our customers. Do you want to talk about how that came to be?
Sure. So 2004, we had some significant hurricanes crisscross the state of Florida. It really, really impacted Publix's operations. So we made a decision to change the way that we went to business and to start installing generators at many of our stores. A lot of the coastal stores have them, and really stores that we feel would be impacted or at a higher risk for storm impacts. So that's an investment that we made. That allows us to keep the store running afterwards. So long as there's fuel in that generator, we should be able to run important things like the lights, like the refrigeration and the freezers and all of that. We should be able to provide power for any of the registers and any of the other equipment that's actually in the store. So whereas an area may be really impacted, even the whole shopping center may be down, we would have the goal of having the Publix store open and available for business.
I think that's important as a sense of it's a way for customers to start to get back to normal if they can walk into a Publix and it's operating at pretty good capacity. There's items on the shelf. There's air conditioning on, hopefully. Yeah. I know there's stories of we set up power strips where customers can charge their cell phones, which is incredibly important if they don't have power.
Absolutely.
It's really our goal of just being a member of the community and being available to help take care of customers and help them get back on their feet.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get a lot of stories of folks that they want to just come to the local Publix because it's where the community is and that's where people are, and they don't want to sit in their dark house alone or anything like that. They can actually charge up their phones, just like you said, and interact with people and start preparing to rebuild. That
makes sense. And I think through all of these, we talk about the trucks on the road, people getting the stores repaired, stores getting back open, our retail associates both before and after the storm. It's really our associates that make the difference.
Yes.
I think as we hear so many times and in so many different cases, Publix associates having this commitment to being there, taking care of the customers, providing that high level of customer service that people expect from Publix. And I know that participating on some of those ERT calls myself, it is important that the first question that always gets asked during those calls is, how are associates?
Right.
Before anything else gets answered, retail leadership, all leadership, obviously a lot of our associates work in our stores, but all leadership is asked, what's the condition of associates, their homes, their cars? Is everybody okay, their families? And we have, whenever there's news that somebody's not, we have internal teams that are dispatched to try to help take care of them and make sure they have the assistance they need. But I think it's Publix associates take care of ourselves and Publix associates taking care of customers that really does make the difference.
Yeah, and it's one of the unfortunate things of the last few years. There's been so many major hurricanes that have really hit a lot of our operating areas and a lot of our stores. So associates have experienced firsthand what it's like to be without power or to have a damaged home or to have some other issue. So when we see storms go into a particular area, one of the really amazing things is that you have associates that are outside of that area that come in to support. So with Hurricane Michael last year up in Panama City Beach, all of the folks that lived in that area, they had the same issues that we had at our stores. Their homes had significant damage. There was a lot of flooding. There was some significant damage all over the place. So for them, the most important thing is getting back to a regular home to make sure that their families are taken care of. So we had associates come in from outside of that area, and they stayed at hotels that were maybe about an hour away, and they drive in every morning to operate those stores, even though those weren't their stores. They jumped at the opportunity to do that because they realized that Publix is an important part of the community, and people needed to see Publix stores back open, and they needed to be able to get their groceries and their medications and everything else that were really crucial to them at that time. And for the associates that lived in those areas and ran those stores, it was more important for them to be home. So and we have that happen a lot with these storms, especially when it happens in a smaller area or maybe just one particular area where folks will come in from outside of there and really bring that store back up to operations very quickly.
Makes a difference. The true definition of teamwork.
It is, yeah.
And I think that a lot of what we're talking about focuses on a hurricane season with us being in the Southeast, but a lot of these things are applied to winter storms that happen in our northern stores.
Yep.
Those same things still apply where we monitor conditions, make sure we close when necessary, and then again with the recovery, we've heard stories of snowstorms up north where our people have slept in the stores overnight because they were stuck on the road and there was no place to go, and we opened the doors and let them sleep there. So it's something that happens throughout the company.
It does, yeah. And similarly, so not every one of our stores has a generator, but stores that don't have a generator, we typically have the ability to pull up a backup generator that's mobile. We have a couple of dozen of those that we're able to deploy around, and typically what we'll do when we see an ice storm approaching an area is we'll station those outside of wherever that particular area might be, so that we can have some resources there within a few hours and try to keep the store operating, so that exactly what you said, so that people can get what they need or maybe even just have a warm place to be.
Well, one of the things I want to make sure we talk about before we go is customers being prepared. We have information on our website, we have information in our store, but it's important for customers to make sure that they've done what they can do to plan ahead so that they're not scrambling at the last minute. So you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah. So the best thing is for you to have a plan. Make sure that you do have some of those those long shelf term items already on hand. Your water and some of the other really important things. But you also want to make sure that you have a checklist. So you don't want to be forgetting anything, because we realize that when you get into the store and things are getting a little bit crazy before the storm actually gets there, that it's very easy to forget things. So Publix.com/storm is a good resource for anyone that's interested to see what checklists they might need, what are some supplies that maybe I haven't thought of, about how much should I have, how much water do I need for each person in my family, and that site can give you more information on all of those things.
Okay, so Publix.com/storm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we also have information that's in the store that they can grab if they're in there. I think it's in our information center.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. When they walk in, typically right up there at the front door, they'll see a hurricane brochure there. Grab one of those, and that also has the checklist and some other good pointers to keep in mind before the storm gets there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, John, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
We thank you for your leadership every year with our ERT. We know it keeps you busy, but we also know you do a great job, and that's evidenced by what we see happen before, during, and after a storm at Publix.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we'll be back right after this. Podcast producer Jeff and I spent hours in the recording studio working on podcasts. On those days, it's hard to get to our local Publix to grab lunch. Good news is we can have a famous pub sub delivered right to the studio. Hey, Jeff, what sounds good for lunch today?
I'm going to pass on the pub sub and get a Cobb salad this week. Grab and go.
That's a good, healthy choice. I'm going to go with your choice last week of the chicken tender sub. It looked good.
It was.
Our favorite store delivered right to us. That's the convenience of grocery delivery from Publix. Just go to Publix.com/shop. You can get delivery within a few hours. Again, that's Publix.com/shop. Prices vary from in-store and service and delivery fees apply. That music means it's time for this episode's trivia question. Today's question is going to be related to the topic of this episode. How many generators does Publix have at our stores? We'll give you the answer at the end of the episode. Welcome back. And now we're joined by Maria Brous, a member of our Public Affairs Department. And we're going to talk now about the things that Publix does with both different agencies in the communities, our associates, to help make sure that we're there after a storm, to help the community heal and get back on its feet. It's part of, again, what we talk about in our mission statement about being involved as responsible citizens in our community. And so, Maria, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And so, as we like to do, our new tradition here on the podcast is have our guests give their Publix story before we get started on talking about the topic at hand. So, what is your Publix story?
I've been with Publix for 29 years. I started out in retail and worked various positions, then went to our Education and Training Development Department, and then I've been part of our Public Affairs team for the past 16 years, most recently as a Director of Media and Community Relations.
Okay. And so in your current role, you have a global picture of a lot of the things that we do to help out after a storm. You're involved in the corporate ERT that we talked to John about earlier. So you're plugged into what's going on. So you get to see how Publix helps. You get to see what Publix does to make a difference. And so that's some of what we want to talk about. So we kind of talked about with John the whole idea of the storms come through. We're now in a recovery mode. We're getting our stores back open again. And your team steps in and is involved kind of for a little bit of the longer haul, if you want to call it that, to help make sure that we're doing our part to help the communities heal. So do you want to give just an overview of what that means?
Absolutely. We've talked about many times that our Publix people make the difference. And after a storm, that's no different, whether it's hurricanes or winter storms. Publix people are there to serve not only their stores, but their communities at large. We spend a lot of time working with organizations such as American Red Cross and Feeding America, even prior to the storm. As we see storms approaching, we start reaching out to our partners and asking to be on the radar to kind of keep us posted. What are they seeing? We compare notes, and then we're working quickly after the storm to assess areas that are impacted and how can Publix help.
Okay. And you mentioned American Red Cross, and I know, well, most customers may not realize, but if they see our registered donation program that typically happens after a storm or some kind of natural disaster, American Red Cross is a lot of times who we work with. I know sometimes there's another agency too. But can you talk about why we work with them and the difference that they make?
Absolutely. So in times of need, most people are engaged and want to help, and they just don't know what they can do. What's the best way to help? And really, sometimes what's needed most are dollars. And American Red Cross is the partner agency that goes into all of the communities across the U.S. when it's impacted and really assesses the situation. And their job is to be the first responder, an emergency, a triage, if you will, like you referred to earlier, of really just helping that community get back on its feet so that businesses can get open, so that a community can be viable. And that's really what American Red Cross does. So we work with them through our register program, as you mentioned. We also have volunteers that work with American Red Cross. And then we also work with Feeding America member food banks. During, and after a storm, their food source is depleted as well. So it really is, do we have product that we can donate? And sometimes, do we have dollars that we can designate for them as well? But it's really staying connected. And those are just two of the many organizations that we help. But part of what we do is being connected to our local communities and working with smaller grassroots efforts that are happening that our folks are connected to.
Do you have a couple examples of the smaller ones? Because your team, you have divisional teams that are out there that are working with all those agencies. Are there a few that come to mind?
Absolutely. For every community, it's going to be different, but we work even with local news stations and trying to host, some of their drives. But we also work with, in each of the varying communities, whether it's the United Way partner agencies, or whether you think about it like Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCA and places that may have had to turn into emergency shelters, how can we help them as well? So the list is very long. But Publix people are always willing to help, whether it's volunteering with their time, talents, and going out there and giving a helping hand.
Okay. And I think there's different stories that we've heard over the years about ways that Publix associates help. But even one I thought that was interesting from, I believe it was Hurricane Florence not too long ago in South Carolina, was this situation where I think we had to help a hospital with a generator. Do you have more details on that?
Sure. So this is just one of many instances where we're able to help, but a local hospital was in need of a generator. Theirs wasn't working properly. And as you can imagine, a hospital is a necessity.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially during this time. So they had reached out to Publix. And I think that that's really unique that a hospital system would reach out, understanding that, we're there to serve the community and asking about, assistance. And we have mobile generators that we're able to move from location. So our Publix people got on the road, sending technicians with the generator to the local hospital, helping get their generator back online, but also keeping our generator there, which they needed to use after a day or so. So it really is about how do we connect and helping that hospital system and the community stay on its feet in such an important time.
And it's really a perfect example of doing really whatever is needed. It wasn't tied specifically to groceries or food, but it was, again, being a responsible citizen in the community and helping out that hospital with technician talent that Publix had.
Exactly. It's what our founder, Mr. George, would have wanted. It's all about Publix people serving inside and outside of our stores.
Yep. And I think there's another example that we heard a little bit about earlier this year, and you can go into more detail, but even in the Panhandle with Hurricane Michael, a store manager who I believe came back from vacation and pretty much hasn't gone on vacation since, I guess is the best way to describe it.
That is very true. So he was on vacation when the storm was coming through and cut his vacation short to come back and help his associates and communities. I think it's something more than 80 homes and families that he's helped. He's passionate about giving back, and that really goes to the strength of the Publix people and caring. He cares about his community. He recognizes, his customers and the associates. So not only did we have associates coming from different areas to help those associates and the community get back on their feet, but even months later, you would think that the area is up and running, but there's still many that need help, and that help continues all year long.
And another one that comes to mind is was a couple years ago, and now with the rise of social media, there's so much that's out there, but it was the video of somebody showing the caravan of Publix semis headed to Key West after a storm. And it was actually emotional for a lot of people to watch because I think they knew what it represented as far as help was on the way to an area that was pretty much isolated and cut off. But can you talk about that? Because there was not only the caravan, but it's what happened once it got there to the Keys.
Exactly. That's probably one of my favorite stories, to be able to see the impact that has. And it was quite a sight when you see more than 10 Publix semis coming on a convoy and coming down. But it was, not only supplies to restock our shelves, but it was also trucks of ice and water that we gave away for free in our parking lot, helping that community start to recover. But it is about the Publix people, because when we got to that store in the Keys, there were groups of Publix people that were waiting to help unload the truck, waiting to give out the free ice and water, helping people. We had store managers that were letting people stay in some of their homes that they had as well, and staying in their RVs and helping. It was really seeing a community pull back together. And we're a fabric of the community. That's what we do. So it's not only about operating a store, but it's making a community stronger and healthier.
And I think what really describes that is the program that your team is responsible for, which is our associates and the service that they provide in the communities. But the term Publix serves, and I think that's a great way to describe all of this.
It is. It's really about, coming together and helping our communities. Publix people, like we say, make the difference each and every day. But it's about the service in our stores and in the service and giving back to our communities. And we couldn't do it without, the heart and the culture that we have in our company. It's about servitude and thinking about that. I've heard another story of one of our assistant store managers, who had a young baby, and she wanted to get back to her community right after a storm and put the baby in pouch and went out to the store and, was seen there greeting her customers and taking care of business because she knew how important that was. But that's the passion and the service that our associates have. It's the commitment that we have to, bringing back our communities.
And we have, there's a day every year that the term Public Serves Day, but we get out there and provide assistance to agencies throughout our operating area. But I think that's a great example of, there's thousands of associates that sign up to participate in that, correct?
Absolutely. We had more than 7,500 associates participate in the one day of service this year for Public Serves Day. But that day of service continues all year long. Folks get engaged and motivated with agencies and nonprofits. And then those same group of people following a storm will decide, we really want to go back out and make a difference and help. And how do we get back to these agencies? So it's a great service that we have inside of our stores, but even more so, it's the family that we have that we create in our stores, but it extends into our community.
Well, and our CEO talks about it all the time about being servant leaders, and I think that that's a great example of our associates understand what that feels like. They know the difference that it makes, and so then in a situation like this with storms, they're eager to go help because they know the difference that they can make because they've already seen it from the work they've done in the past. Well, Maria, we thank you. We appreciate this. It's great. I could talk forever about Publix Associates and the things they do, but I think we're going to run out of time here soon. But we appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing those stories. And we look forward to you joining us next time on our next Public Stories podcast. Now it's time to answer this episode's trivia question. The question was, how many Publix stores have generators? It was a little bit of a trick question because every Publix location has an emergency generator that allows us to run basic operations during a short-term power outage. But over 835 of our stores have large 500 kilowatt generators that allow us to run the majority of the store during extended power outages, like after a weather event. Thank you for listening to this episode of Public Stories. Our podcast is recorded at our studios in Lakeland, Florida, and produced by Publix Visual Media Services. You can find other episodes on our Publix blog, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download your podcasts. You can also just search Public Stories on Google. Our stores are the best, and we want this podcast to be the best. Tell us what you think by giving us a rating. The more stars, the better. If you have suggestions for what we can improve, or if there are topics you want us to discuss in future podcasts, send us a message via our Publix Facebook or Twitter account. On behalf of over 200,000 Publix associates, thank you for shopping with us.